Welcome to the Fairways and Day Trader Show. I'll be doing the third video and final of this mock draft simulator series of the first round. And we finished off the 21st pick with the Steelers. So we'll be kicking off this draft with the San Diego Chargers here at 22. And when you look at the Chargers at 22, they'll be looking at offensive guard's a big need for them. They could use another weapon on offense. Whether that's someone like Kenyon Sadiq or Casey Concepcion or Denzel Boston, but they also need help at corner too as well. So when I'm kind of looking at what they need, offensive line is always something that they touch on. Every single year. Jim Harbaugh loves loading up his offensive line. And right now, guard would be their biggest need. And as I look through of guys that can play guard, this is early for Basantis and Pregnon and Rutledge. And even on the guys that you can, maybe play at guard from tackle, I believe it's a little early though, still for them too. So I don't think I'll be looking at guard here. Defense, you could be looking at edge. Keldrick Falk is a player that's been mocked to them. T.J. Parker is another player. I almost wonder too if Peter Woods could also be a pick here for the Chargers. But I think we're gonna kind of narrow this down into defense because if I look at the wide receivers, Casey Concepcion, is a player they could use, and Boston too as well. But they really need to do some things on defense, especially after Mentors leaving, and then a couple defensive players too as well. One of those being an edge player. And I think we're going to kind of look at Keldrick Falk here and use his potential as something they'll be looking to build on that edge position. And with Khalil Mack isn't getting any younger, and I think they need to go to the edge to solidify that. Next up is the Eagles, and the Eagles are kind of looking at a fill-in tackle one day for Lane Johnson. They could use wide receiver because everybody knows they're trying to move A.J. Brown. Keldrick Falk would have been a player potentially they were interested in. I don't think Akeem Mesidor or Malachi Lawrence is a player that could go here. Probably a little early for Young and Parker in my according to my big board. But I think tackle, especially a developmental tackle, or Kenyon Sadiq would kind of be a player that I would kind of be looking at right here. Uh, Goddard also is one of those players. He isn't getting any younger. And they could, if they get rid of A.J. Brown, they really need a dynamic player in the passing game to go opposite of Devontae Smith. And when I look at Casey Concepcion, I think he's a little too much slot inside, same type of wide receiver as Smith. So could they maybe go Denzel Boston as an option? That's a possibility, but I think you kind of got to look at it as in, is Boston really the answer for Jalen Hurts? And when I look at it, I think the offensive line for me is probably the bigger need right now to fill Lane Johnson later on. So I think I'm going to lean here either Max Ionachor or offensive tight end with Kenyon Sadiq. And it's kind of a tough one because if I look at, what can they do later on to get a tackle. They could go Crown over, which I like, but not all that much. He's probably a third, a fourth round pick in my opinion. World is an option that they could, almost redshirt him because of his leg injury. He is a right tackle too, so that kind of fits trying to replace Lane Johnson. So they could technically go uh, with World or Shelton or even Tiernan, maybe even later on in the draft. And if you're looking at wide receivers, Chris Bell and Bernard, I think kind of fit what they would want. Maybe even Jacoby Lane or Malachi Fields later kind of fit what they'll be wanting to do. But the sake of this mock, we're gonna give them a tight end here. I think to really build on just an overall weapon for this Eagles offense. So the Browns coming off of taking Monroe Frilling earlier, and I think this is really setting up good for them because they also still need a guard. We already touched on guards a little early, but quarterback with Ty Simpson. I think they'll just be waiting for next year. Not a center really ready. So I think it's time to kind of look and fill that wide receiver position. And I think KC Concepcion is a player for the Browns that they just cannot pass up here at 24. And I think he's going to be a bad man when it comes to special teams and catching the ball and what he can do after it. That I, Judy Concepcion, uh, and they've also got who's that other wide receiver? Uh, he's a bigger, taller wide receiver. His name's escaping me right now, but they really could use a third guy, and they've got a good tight end that kind of came out of nowhere. That wasn't really projected to be the guy when they already had David Njoku. So KC Concepcion is going to be the pick here. Next up is the Bears. So the Bears would kind of be looking at edge, safety, potentially wide receiver, even um, maybe defensive tackle. Yeah, they could. But players that I think they would have loved to maybe had a chance at would have been Falk, Thieneman, McNeil Warren. I think probably over Thieneman probably fits what they want to do even better. And then Caden McDonald and TJ Parker. So if we look at edge, uh, Akeem Mesidor is a player too that he just kind of plays like a bear. He's tough, strong, can do a lot of different things. Caden McDonald is also an option they could go. Um, if I was looking edge, I mean, I like Zion Young, but TJ Parker or Mesidor would probably be the pick. I still think Malachi Lawrence is better than all of them, but I don't know if he's the best fit for Chicago and what they want to do on defense. So I think we're gonna kind of use either Mesidor or TJ Parker here. And if I look at kind of TJ Parker, um, does he have any of his testing? Yeah, he had a good RAS score. Um, his power's elite. His hand usage. He just seems to me to be more of what the Bears like. So I'm going to lock it in with Akeem Mesidor here at 25. So that brings up the Bills here at 26. They are also where you're kind of looking at a safety or a corner or a wide receiver. And I think this really just kind of comes down to just a few players for me. And I think for me, Caden McDonald, uh, Peter Woods, and probably Parker or Lawrence here at 26. Mm, And I I know I'm probably a little bit higher on Malachi Lawrence than a lot of people are, but when I look at it, I think they really need some help on the pass rush, and I think he's got more juice than Young, Parker, or Yakis. Uh, Yakis is a player that I think is just a little bit more um, pro ready right now. Um, he's 6'4", 260, 10-inch hands. That's pretty big. He's got good arm length. Look at that bench press rep is crazy. Malachi Lawrence, uh, he's got the speed, the explosion, the vert. He didn't do bench press, and I'm sure he probably wouldn't do as good as those there. But he still almost 9 1/4 and 33.5 inch arms. And I think I'm going to stay true to my board, and I'm going to pick Malachi Lawrence with the most potential upside here to the Bills. So the Niners are up here, and they are kind of looking at tackle, maybe a wide receiver, and edge too as well. And they really need help at tackle. And it's really comes down to it. I know they just did a deal with Trent Williams, and so they've got him locked in for a few more years. And so you won't really be looking at necessarily trying to fill him right now. Um, could they fill right tackle or maybe even a guard spot potentially? Maybe just a little early for a guard spot. Um, Wide receivers, they got Evans, Pearsall, and Kirk. And I really like Pearsall. And he's just kind of been, suffered from injuries and had a lot of issues there. But I think they can maybe get a wide receiver to complement uh, him and go offensive tackle, which is probably their biggest need. And I think Lomu can play right tackle, and he's good enough to do that. So I'm going to lock in Lomu right here at 27 to the Niners. So next up is the Texans, and the Texans are kind of looking at, I think, a guard, a defensive tackle, probably. They probably also maybe need a tackle too as well. If I try to remember who is their right tackle? Is it Esri or is he the left? Well, he's the left tackle. Braden Smith's the right tackle. So they don't really need to worry about going tackle. They'll be looking more guard. Um, and while I think it's just a little bit early for any of those guards, I think Caden McDonald or Peter Woods is the best overall option here. And if I'm looking at pass rush, um, it's Peter Woods. If I'm looking at run defense, it's Cade McDonald. And I think you got Will Anderson, you got Daniel Hunter, you got some other pieces in there, and I think you got to try to make sure that you got to keep that middle clogged up for those guys to be able to go. And I think for me, Cade McDonald is the pick here to the Texans. Next up is the Chiefs, and the Chiefs took Francis Mauigoa off his tackle uh, with their first pick, and they are a team that I think need to stick to defense now. They could go wide receiver, so Denzel Boston's an option with Kenyon Sadiq off the board. There's not really a tight end here. But Boston or Bell would be my first two guys to go. I got Boston ahead of Bell, but I think they really need to go defense. And when I look, they kind of need some edge help, but corner is the number one need that they have. And they did have a top 30 visit with Colton Hood, and for me, it's either Hood or Chris Johnson. And for me, I've got Johnson and Hood almost together, one and the same. 6 foot 193. Um, a little shorter arms on Chris Johnson than I would have liked. Um, a little bit of average arm length and size. He did run a 4.44 40. Did Chris Johnson run? I didn't see. Yeah, so he's about the same. So they're pretty close here. Um, so I'm gonna go with a guy that they did a top 30 visit on, and go Hood over Johnson. Now, the Dolphins took Mansour Delane here with their first pick, and now we're up at number 30. So they'll be kind of looking at edge, wide receiver. They already went corner, um, and wide receiver here, and I think for them they almost have to go with a wide receiver here. You've got to start trying to build something off of um, the offense in a chain. Um, Casey Concepcion's gone. I like Boston over Bell, but I don't know when they have their next pick after this. I feel like it's not too much later, but I don't think they can get Boston, and they may not even get Bell either. So I think they got to go Denzel Boston here, and just lock in one of those wide receiver guys and see what else they can do at edge later on, and maybe even safety too later on. So next up is the Patriots, and the Patriots I think would have been kind of looking at a right tackle, an edge, or a wide receiver. Um, I think it would be a little pushing it for wide receiver. Uh, if you look at the edge players, uh, there's still Zion Young and T.J. Parker and Gabe Yakus. Um, and for me, if I was trying to pick Zion Young or T.J. Parker, I think I would rather go Zion Young. But Gabe Yakus is a player for me that I think is a little bit more like Mike Vrabel. And if I'm looking at edge, I think that's where they go. Linebacker, could they go C.J. Allen or Jacob Rodriguez? For me, I've got Rodriguez over Allen. Um, it's a little early for tight end, safety, a little early for Halsey. Um, so for me, it's either Jacob Rodriguez or uh, Gabe Yakus or Zion Young, and they very well could go Peter Woods too, and really give a guy that can maybe play a little bit in a 3-4 end, and then also in a 4-3 base too as well, and just the traditional defensive tackle. But he's just kind of that tweener type player, and I think the Patriots just kind of take the best available player, and for me, that's Peter Woods. Although Christian Miller and Young and Jacob Rodriguez are all still there, I just think they could just kind of go Peter Woods and take the best player available. And last up in the first round is the Seattle Seahawks, and they have needs on the edge and corner, and also running back, but it's too early for me to want to press the running back position. Um, they could also possibly maybe want a guard here too as well. But I mean, with Basantis here, that actually isn't for what they need for this offensive line. That would actually be a good pick for them. And if I look at edge, um, they could go Young, they could go Yakus, but I really think that front four is pretty solid, even though they did lose Mafe. Uh, so they could go Parker, Yakus, or Young. Um, and when I look at linebacker, that's just more of a pick that they probably can deal with a little later. Chris Johnson's also in play. Man, they got some really good players here. Chris Johnson, Zion Young, TJ Parker. I think I think it's got to be edge or corner. I really do think it's got to be edge or corner. And I'm going to go ahead and lock in corner because I think I've got a slightly better grade on Chris Johnson than any of these edge rushers, and I think you can maybe in the in this end of the second and third rounds, you got guys like potentially R. Mason Thomas and Dennis Sutton, and I really like Jay Barham and his physicality. Um, Kieran Colford is also a guy that I kind of like. I think he's closer to the top 100 in my opinion, and he's in my inside mine top 100. Um, but I'm going to go Chris Johnson. It's a passing league. They need to kind of go through it and get those secondary taken care of. And when I go through and look at all these picks, so be with the Cowboys was pretty solid, and that'll wrap it up for today's video. Thanks for watching.